Hi there. As this thumbnail suggests, today we're going to go through my favorite romantic palettes. My husband and I just celebrated our 30th anniversary, and so whenever it's that time of the year where our friends are taking us out for anniversary dinners, my husband and I are doing something for our anniversary. I like to pull out my really soft, pretty pink, purple, light red palettes, and I like to decide what I'm going to wear. So in no order, I'm just going to go through these palettes and show them to you, and hopefully you'll enjoy this as much as I do. So let's just start with what I have here on top, and this is one of these Patrick Ta little duos, and this is I'm With Her, and I chose the pink one. This pink color right here is very vibrant, and it's actually very flattering, very pretty on the eyes. This is more of a neutral pink if that's what you like. I use these together with just a bronzer in the crease. I use this out here, and I use this on the inner eyelid, and I call it a day. It gives so much sparkle, and it looks really good in the low light. So this is for those of you who just want a very simple romantic look for your anniversary. Next, I pulled out a Chanel quad. This is Le Beige Tender. Let me take my little cotton applicators out of this. Here's the color story. This is more of a warm, neutral pink color story. It doesn't look like a whole bunch in the pan. On the eyes, though, it is just very delicate and feminine and soft and ethereal, and it just is really flattering, especially on mature eyelids. So this I would definitely pull out for a nice anniversary dinner. Staying with the, I guess, expensive theme, I don't know the other word for it right now, luxury theme. This is a YSL palette, and this is 400. I believe this is called Babylon Roses. This is one of their clutch palettes, and this was in the first batch that was released. I chose the rosier color story. This is so exquisitely beautiful on the eyes. I start this in the crease. I deepen up with this. I just share these two on the lids. This is a nice shimmer, but this one right here has some very special sparkle in it. And this is probably one of my favorite romantic palettes. It really, in my opinion, is worth the money that I spent for it. Next, I'm going to some indie brands. Excuse me. This is Give Me Glow, the Vintage Rose palette from Give Me Glow. I've been, starting in 2024, I started collecting more independently owned brands, small brands like this, and this is the first one that I chose from this brand because of the color story. So obviously you have the pinks here. Even this glitter here would look really good under the brow bone in the inner corner. What I like to do is put this along the lower lash line and then top it in the center with this and do a pink green look, and you kind of look like you have a rosebud on your eyes. This is a very pretty palette, no complaints about it. It just has some different tones of rosy colors that I really appreciate having in my collection. This is just a very, very soft palette from Urban Decay. This is the Naked Sin palette, and it is their very light, very neutral, rosy tones. So if you are a really subtle girly, this is the perfect palette. I think these are $27, maybe $30, and you have every shade you need from the brow bone to the inner corner to the lid. I put this in the crease, I build up with this, and then I pack these on the lid. If I want a little smokiness to transition from this to this, I'll put this right in here. And this, again, doesn't look like much in the pan, but it gives you a very subtle, very neutral, beautiful, romantic look. The ABH palette that I chose is the Norvina palette, and the reason that I chose this is for the pinks and the purples in this palette. This has different shades and tones of purples right here, and the same thing with the pinks, but also so that you can, if you don't want a monotone purple or pink look, you have plenty of neutrals to add in. So the Norvina palette has always been my go-to from ABH when I want more of a romantic look on my eyes. I had to mention Patrick Ta, the Major Dimension 2 palette. This is his more rosy themed palette. I just pulled this out a few days ago and used it. I hadn't used it in a while, and reminded myself of absolutely how much I adore this palette. So I started with this shade, went here, I skipped this one, went to these, and then I used these two on the lid, and then I used this as liner. It's a cream shadow, and it performed so well. The look I got was, it just reminded me how good these palettes from Patrick Ta are. The Sigma palette that I chose is the New Mod palette, and it's going to be pretty obvious why I chose this one. It's definitely a rosy theme. This is my favorite color in this entire palette. It's just bluish, purplish, brownish on the eyes. So pretty. So you have all of these beautiful rosy, purple, pink tones. And again, you have some neutrals so that you can have more of a neutral look than a monochromatic pink or purple look if you want. This is my favorite palette from Sigma just because I love rosy brown tones. And yeah, I love this palette. If you want something a little bit more grungy, I would recommend definitely the Gemini 2 from Melt Cosmetics. These roses right here are definitely more grungy than they look in the pan. They're darker, they're deeper. They just give off more of a reddish kind of vibe to me. And then you have the contrast of these greens here. Again, you can put these on the lower lash line, or you can mix the colors together and get a beautiful, beautiful look. But the Gemini 2 palette is one of my favorites from Melt. And to me, this definitely gives me grungy, romantic vibes. One that I like to use as a base for other palettes maybe that are super shimmer heavy is the Danessa Myricks. These are creams, these are powders. So you could either do an entire rosy matte look with this, or you could just start the base of your look and then use a topper on the lid if that's what you wanted to do. And you can also use some of these as blushes and have more of a monochromatic look all over your face. You could even use these on your lips and maybe top them with a gloss for a super monochrome look. But I have both of these Danessa Myricks. What are these called? The Lightworks Groundwork palettes. So I think that they are a great foundation palette for really any look. I'm going to do some of my smaller Natasha Denona palettes. The Mini Starlet is the first one. This is a newer palette. This has a rosy undertone, but it's much more neutral. And so again, if you're not into pinks and roses and purples, but you still want a nice romantic vibe for your date or for your anniversary, I think that this palette would give you more of a neutral look with just that barely there hint of a rosy tone. And if you really want to just go all out, you can go with the Natasha Denona Love palette. And I love this because it has more of a warm pink, and then it has your deeper mauve color. The associated shimmers are there. And I use this as an eyeliner. So you get a complete look with this palette, and it's very romantic, and the sparkles are super pretty on your eyes. Two more Natasha Denona palettes. This is the Mini Rose palette. I'm wondering if we're going to at some point get a Midi Rose palette. I don't know. There was a lot of conjecture about this. What I like about this palette is that you do again have your warmer pink, your cooler pink, but you have a little bit different tone of brown, and you have some other different colors for contrast here. This one on the end is a satin color. A lot of times I do use it as a matte though, and this is really your only big time sparkly shade. So for those who really like to build matte looks, matte heavy looks, I think that the Mini Rose palette would be nice for you for a romantic look. And last of all is the Mini Crush from Natasha Denona. So this is more of a really kind of red burgundy warm tone look, if that's what you're going for. So again, I start my looks off with this in the crease. I build up with this. I put this on the outer corner. I use this shimmer on the eyelid, and then I use this as an eyeliner. So I have an entire look in this palette. And so if I'm really wanting a red look and I want maybe a bolder, more red leaning lip or something like that, I'll use the Mini Crush palette. Let me get my Pat McGrath palette unwrapped here. The palette that I chose obviously is the Mothership 7, which is the Divine Rose. I always remember the rose, I forget the divine. And I don't feel like you can get much more romantic than this palette. Even the cover has roses on it. So what I do love is that these romantic tones are dustier. And so they're not super, super vibrant if that's not what you're going for. And obviously you still do have some neutrals here. And then you have these special shades right here that you can really change up the look with. You can use a couple of these on the eye together and base it with these rosy colors or a combination of rose and brown, and then add one or two of these shimmers. I feel like this is such a romantic palette without being in your face romantic, because the colors of Divine Rose are more muted. So go through your Pat McGrath collection if you have Divine Rose in there. Definitely pull her out and use her this time of year. Let's just go through some single shadows real quick. This is one of those KVD. It's a Dazzle stick and it's in the mauve color. The writing is kind of worn off. You want to talk about some intense shimmer on your eyes. Look at that, you guys. It has like a brown, mauve, almost purpley undertone. And the KVD Dazzle sticks, they no longer get the hype, but they're still one of the prettiest single shadow sticks on the market. One of the newer singles to my collection is this mauvey gray color from Ilia. This is, they call it liquid powder, and the writing is too small, but you can see it's this really unique color, almost a mauvey brown. And watch this with this color right here. That's why I got it. Isn't that a beautiful look right there? If you don't want to go over the top, pink, red, or purple, isn't this a gorgeous neutral but still romantic look that you can use? I also decided to go with a couple of the Laura Mercier Caviar Sticks, Strike a Pose Rose and Modern Rose. Let me just swatch these real quick for you. So if you're just a simple gal, but you want to look like you spent an hour on your makeup, you can just use a couple of these Laura Mercier Caviar Sticks. If you want a drugstore option, Milani and e.l.f. both have really nice eyeshadow sticks as well. And then lastly, in the single category, I have this Danessa Myricks. These are the Color Fix foils. I don't think this is the shade Ballerina, but I have the shade Ballerina. This is just a real pretty pinky color. Again, you put a little bronzer through the lid, maybe your blush to kind of have a monochromatic look. And then look at that beautiful color that you can put on your eyes. You can even use these on your cheeks and lips. So those are my single romantic shadows. One more, Sitara Sparkles from Kulfi. Look at that color. Very popular. I think this one and the gold one are the most popular ones that they have. Sitara Sparkles is really, really sparkly. Looks good on your eyes all day long. I was just looking to see if those two would go together. Sometimes you accidentally find little combinations this way. I have one Kaja stack that I wanted to show you, and this is Mauve Bouquet. So these Kaja stacks, they have 3 shadows, and in this one you have one mauve brown color that is deep. And then you have a shimmer. And then you have a super sparkly topper. I use these all together. I bought this because Samantha March was wearing this one day. She didn't tell us what she had on, but everybody went nuts over it. So she told us, and I went out and got this just because I saw it on her eyes, and it was just beautiful. Let's do some more indie palettes now. First, Clarity Cosmetics Deadly Roses. I love skulls and roses together, so you'll see a couple of those in here today. So Clarity Cosmetics is a small, independently owned brand. The reason I got this, obviously the color story is just perfect for me. But I got it because you do have your reds and this light sparkle, but you also have some neutrals and some greens. There's just, with these 9 pans, there are so many combinations. But if you really, really want to go there with the red, if you really want that to pop, this is a really excellent shadow. And then you can use this shimmer over top of it and then spotlight the middle of your lid. It'll kind of mimic a halo look. With this shimmer, pop this on the lower lid, and again, you have a rosebud on your eyes. So really pretty. I showcased this in my winter palettes, but it's Skulls and Roses, so I had to show it again. This is Forbidden Love by Clarity Cosmetics, and this is a purple and blue color story. And again, my favorite shimmer in here kind of just fell out on me. But you have a pinkier purple, and then you have some bluish purples, this purple right here. And I love a purple and blue look, and I think that you can make that very romantic, and you can also go a little bit more of a neutral route with this palette. And so Skulls and Roses was the main reason that I chose this palette, but I do like the color story. My last Skull and Roses is actually called Skulls and Roses, and this is from Kaima Cosmetics, another independently owned brand. And in my opinion, this is just a perfect palette. You have red, you have a different shade of red, you have a wine color, a purple color, and then you have browns, and you have silvers and blacks, and you have all these different colors of shimmers. So you could just put together any number of beautiful looks with this palette. And these shimmers are really impactful. You see that? Oh my goodness, that is so pretty. I'm not going to swatch very many because I don't want this to be 10 hours long, but there's a few in here that I just really wanted you to be able to see. So Kaima Cosmetics, if you haven't checked them out, they're an indie brand and they're pretty affordable. So Bella Beauté Bar, this is the Dead Roses palette, and I just thought this was just such a cool play on love, you know, anti-love kind of theme. Even the names of the shades are just adorable. So this is for if you really want to take it there, all right? So you're wanting to go really, really colorful, and you're wanting to go super duper impactful. You got these multi-chromes, and you've got these really vibrant, almost neon shades, and you can still have a little bit more of a muted look if you want to. This is a good color just to start off in your crease. and then you can go a little more muted, or you can just go pow wow here. The shimmers in this palette for me absolutely make this palette. So this is one of my top romantic palettes. I'm gonna take this with me when we go for our little beach trip. Maybe I'll do a look for you with it. Another Bella Beauté bar palette that I absolutely could not pass over is the Smoky Glam palette. So for those of you who do want something from an indie brand that's a little more muted, this is it. So you can see all the pinks, purples, some more dusty muted shades, but also you have your neutrals and some more green shades down here. So you could go so many directions with this palette. You can be as in your face as you want, or you can just about be as muted as you want. Look at this shade right here. It's the shade Imagine. Let me swatch this for you. There you go. That is just so pretty on the eye, especially if you put it all over the lid and give it a lot of space. It's a really, really pretty shadow. I chose one palette from Inslee Rain. I could have chosen 2 or 3. What I decided to go with was Lands of Enchantment, because this is more of a soft pastel color combination. So you have your deeper purples here, you have some medium purples here, and then you have some light colors here. And then you have these really gorgeous sparkly shades that you can use with them. So you can just get a whole look. And then if you wanted to bring in another color, you didn't want to just stick with the purples, pinks, and reds, you could pull in some other of these blue and green colors. So this is a favorite spring palette of mine, but when I remembered all of the beautiful pink tones in here and the really, really good shimmers that Inslee Rain does, I definitely wanted to include one palette. The other palette that was in contention but didn't make it was the Strawberry Garden, and that's because there's only one row of your pinks and things like that. It has a lot of other colors in there, and it doesn't overwhelmingly feel romantic to me. Let's see here. Let's go now to Viseart. This is the Cashmere palette. Again, this is for those of you who want something a little more subtle. So this has your really pretty rosy colors, but it also has your browns, and the shimmers that Viseart does are just really, really pretty on the eyes. I've been wearing a couple of Viseart, the new Ceranews palette in particular. I've been wearing a lot lately. I just wore that to work Friday, and I got so many compliments. This is the Violette Vespertine palette, and this is personally my favorite romantic palette. Although it doesn't look super romantic here, you do have your rosy browns. This is one of my favorite colors in my entire collection. I am just weak for a rosy brown color like that. This is a really gorgeous purple color, so it's more muted, but yet it is a little more colorful. And 2 more Viseart palettes. First is the Violet palette. This is a little more vibrant. You have your bright purples in here mixed with some neutrals, and then kind of a bluish teal kind of a shimmer in here that I think just adds a lot of interest to this palette. And lastly is Cashmere Charmeuse, and this is definitely giving the more muted rosy vibes. So if you just maybe wanted to use one kind of rosy shade and the rest you just wanted to keep neutral, you have options in here. So let's go through some of the Natasha Denona MIDI palettes. First, I have the Roxa palette. This is a purple and pink color story, and you cannot get much more romantic than that. And the Natasha Denona shimmers are simply exquisite. So I enjoy the Roxa palette. It makes me think of romance. The Glaminatrix Rich Romantic palette. This was sold out and I waited very impatiently for the restock of this palette. I had to have it because I love these murky greenish brownish colors, and this mixed with this or these two together, or you could just stick with the pinks and the purples, and then these duochromes and multichromes in this palette. You could use any one of them to accomplish a very romantic date night eye look. The Huda Beauty palette that I chose is the Rose Quartz palette, and I think this will be obvious too. This has a lot of roses, purples, some muted purples, but it also has some pretty brown, more warm, rosy shades, and some neutral shades, and some really pretty shimmers in here to top them all off. These pink colors look so pretty on the eye, and Huda just did a great job with these palettes. I'm so sad that she's discontinuing them. The Natasha Denona Love palette. This is a really literal interpretation of a romantic palette. You have it all here. Wines, burgundies, reds, purples, pinks, deep plum, a couple of more neutral leaning shadows if you wanted to not have it look totally monochromatic. But the Natasha Love palette, yeah, that's pretty much, no question about it, that's a romantic palette. Two other Natasha palettes that I thought of, and the first one is the Retro palette. This is in my, I'd say, top two of Natasha Denona's palettes, because again, I love these rosy brown tones with these burgundies, and the Retro palette just, it makes me feel so good looking at this. I could just stare at this palette all day. So you've got your burgundies, your wines, your purples, and then your rosier browns again over in this corner. And I'm just, again, I'm weak for a color like that right there. So that's the Natasha Denona Retro palette. One that I hadn't thought of, but I watched Heather Austin's romantic palette video review yesterday, was the My Dream palette by Natasha Denona. So after Heather showcased this, I decided to take mine out and take a closer look at it. And I totally agree with her. You obviously have this corner here, which is very, very wine, burgundy. But even these colors over here, they're warmer, but they're still a very romantic, still would be a very pretty romantic look on the eyes. So definitely, after seeing her video, I had to pull this out and include it. 3 more palettes left. This one, again, it's the Unveiled palette. And this is a makeup artist who did bridal makeup, and she and Sydney Grace collaborated, and this is what she came up with. So she said that usually brides want one of 3 looks on their wedding day: a rosy look, a warm look, or a more cool look. And so I like this because you still have your rosy tones, which are very feminine, which are very romantic. But then if you prefer to do a totally neutral romantic look, you have that in this palette as well. So there's a dark version and a light version, which I love. So I have the light version, but for people who have dark skin, Sydney Grace, every single palette she comes out with a light and a deep version. So this would be too light for deep skin, this color right here. So she made this color darker and the corresponding colors darker as well. And I adore that. I admire her so much for taking the extra effort so that everybody is included. And next I have 2, I know who these are. Lethal Cosmetics palettes. The first one is the Midnight Serenade palette. So I like this because obviously you have these colors here. Again, the corresponding colors, this is more of a peachy pink, but yet it's still very romantic. And what I really love is this shimmer in this palette. They're so bright and beautiful on the eyes. They're very dramatic on the eyes. And the Lethal formula is also really, really good. This is another Lethal palette, and a lot of times they don't put the names of their palettes on here. This is, I think, something Moth or something like that. So I love this color story because, again, we're looking at those rosy browns. What I really like about this shimmer is fabulous. But I like these pops of green in here. So you could do a rosy look on the eye, and then you could use either this shimmer, or you could use this shimmer, or even this shimmer. But then for just a cool little unexpected contrast, you could use a little bit of the green shimmer. So I thought that this definitely had romantic undertones or overtones to it. So I have to decide what I'm going to bring to the beach now to do my eye looks, but I wanted to pull them all out so that I had all of my choices. I'll probably bring 1 or 2 palettes with me. So we celebrated our 30th anniversary on July 14th. And my husband has cancer. He's fighting cancer. So this anniversary for us is just so precious. So I'm really looking forward to spending some time away with my husband, away from work, away from the medical treatments, just away to get away together. So, you know, if you have an anniversary coming up, or if you are married, time is so precious. So just, you know, be forgiving, be kind, be loving with your mate, and just realize that life can change so quickly. So thank you for tuning in, and I love you all.